This is the Financially Simple Podcast, a show dedicated to destroying the complexities of money for today's small business owner. And now, here's your host, pizza-loving, certified financial planner, Justin Goodbread.
Welcome to Financially Simple. This is a finance show for small business owners about money, how it works in our business and our personal lives, and how we can build wealth to be financially independent. I'm your host, Justin Goodbread, and today is episode number 26. Today's episode is titled, The Sales Presentation. Yeah, we're getting to the point now where I read a book one time that said, it's time to put the sales into the sell. I don't remember where I saw that. I don't think it had anything to do with exit planning, but I thought it was a very interesting statement. And that's what we're doing. We're going to put the sales into the sell. If you're like me, whenever I receive that offer, you're thinking, I have worked my entire life for this point. All the years of hard work has come to this point, and now I get the opportunity to make a presentation to a buyer. This is the biggest presentation of your life. I remember thinking that laying in bed. And you think about it, it's true. We've worked our whole lives. I can remember making this presentation to the buyer of my second business, saying, I hope he sees the business the same way I see it. I've been on the other side of the table where I was representing a buyer. In fact, I remember one of the first times I dealt with a business sale as a professional. This was not for one of the companies that I sold, but rather I was acting as a financial advisor for a buyer. And I was sitting on the side of a table, a big boardroom with a CPA and attorney, and we were on the buyer side. And the seller, this particular female, had put together her selling army, is what I called it. I mean, the whole side of the table was booked with suits and everybody. And her whole idea was doing exactly what I had done, and that was, how in the world am I going to convince this buyer that my company's worth their money? I'll never forget, though, what I learned in that particular event. We're sitting there, and just after the first break, we're sitting out in the hallway, we're talking about what we just experienced, and the experienced CPA, now he's since retired, a good friend of mine, done many of these deals before, but he's sitting outside and he says, boys, talking to me and the other attorney, almost like a father figure would talk to us. He said, boys, if we end up liking this company, we have to move fast. The buyer has made a big mistake. And now we're sitting here, you know, I'm a young CFP at that point. I feel like I am young today, but this is some 15 years ago. And I'm sitting there and the attorney's looking at me, and he had been in the business for some 10 years and good friend of mine still. And we're like, a rookie mistake, dude, she's got an army across. And he said, nope, she put her best people on the team. And I can remember looking at him almost like a calf looking at a new gate. For those of you in the city, that means you don't know what you're looking at. You're like very inquisitive, almost cockeyed. I can remember sitting at him, looking at him in the hallway and go, why is this a mistake? Now, over the years, I've seen firsthand how big of a mistake this was. But at that time, I couldn't put it together. And you're probably thinking like me, Justin, it's the biggest deal of my life. I need my best people in that room. Yeah, I get it. That's what I thought, right? You're like, dude, I need to have the people who brought me to the dance to help me get across the finish line, right? Well, if you're thinking like this, like I was many, many years ago, then we're about to put the biggest deal of our lives in trouble. By the way, I would have made the same mistake. It's so easy to do. So let me explain it. And you're like, Justin, you better have a good explanation for this. Well, think about it. When you decide to sell, you followed my advice and you've hired a good CFP, a good certified financial planner, a good attorney, a good CPA. You may have even hired some transition experts by now, maybe an M&A broker, investment banker, something like that. Maybe you've even hired the analyst or a valuation advisor to come in. Yeah, you built up a great team. What do we do next? Well, we go into our company and we grab our division heads. We grab the CFO and we grab the managers and all the major players who helped us come to the dance. Then think about it. What happens next? Now, you may think, yeah, my team can handle this. That's what I was thinking. I was like, I need to get the people involved who know my company. After all, we're all going to be putting in many, 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 many hours. And at the end of this, we're going to get a huge paycheck. Yeah. What happens is this. While your consultants, the attorney, the CPA, and the CFP, respond to the very many questions of the buyers, your leaders, that CFO, the different managers of your organization, are left scrambling about, trying to keep up with a list of document production, the interviews they're going to have to go through, the guided tours, the phone calls, and even the entertainment of the buyer's team. Yet the rest of the company is left unattended. You see, performance falls. Customers leave. Revenue plummets. Let's put it in a real-life scenario. Your marketing team slacks up on marketing because their top sales guys and their top marketers are obviously helping get the deal done. So your marketing team slacks up, and then the leads or your funnel inflow starts to dry up. Your top salespeople don't follow up on leads because they're too busy working on the deal. Production ends up sliding down because of the customer inflow, and an order is missed. Or maybe a long-term customer starts looking for other companies. Why? Because we pulled our leaders, the people who run the company, out, and your company begins to suffer, and it can be devastating. You could lose your biggest client. You could lose some of your rank and file employees. Heaven help us, but you could even lose some of the key players on your transition team. And don't think for a second the buyer doesn't recognize what's going on. They do. They will, and the buyer could possibly end up walking. And then if you're lucky, you're left to pick up the pieces of something, a mess. So yeah, it was the potential biggest mistake. And that savvy CPA recognized it. He recognized we could have a problem here. So how do you avoid making this rookie mistake during the presentation process? Well, you're going to hire consultants, obviously, but we're also going to use non-critical personnel. You're like, well, what is that? Well, long before the deal reaches this point, we're going to hire some people who are trained, maybe not to the extent of your top executives of your various departments, but we're going to hire some people who know the systems well enough they can maneuver. They can be the gopher, if you will, almost like the caddy who kind of knows the golf course day one. You know, they maybe played it a couple times, and now they're going to show you the different turns. You'll want to have these employees in every department of your company so that your consultants can work with them without interruption, without causing problem to the operation of your company. That's the idea. And at this point, you're like, dude, how much is this going to cost? Yeah, I can remember that was the same question I asked sitting in the hallway that day. I can remember looking at that CPA and going, how in the world would you offset this particular cost? And he said, you know what? I can calculate the expense of hiring the employees that we need. He goes, what I can't calculate is the potential devastation of making this rookie mistake.
You are listening to Financially Simple, destroying the complexities of money for today's small business owner.
So by this time, you've assembled your team of internal and external players for the transition. We're not going to make the rookie mistake. And we have our pitch book. And you have the potential buyer who's interested in the company. What next? Well, next, obviously, is the pitch. You're going to need to sell the company so a sell takes place. And I just used a play on words there. We're going to have to try to sell as if go out and make a sell for something so the company ultimately sells. You're going to need to sell the company to the potential buyer so that the prospective buyer will make you an offer. So you go back to that boardroom I mentioned earlier, and I'm sitting there on the buyer side. My job was listen to come up with the hard questions which could stump the buyer's team. That was my whole job there, was just to listen with the owner and the CPA and the attorney, listen as clearly as I could and see if I could come up with questions. Just write down questions the entire time so I could create a crack in their presentation. If I could get one little toehold or a crack in their presentation, perhaps, just maybe, we could get a lower bid price on this company if we wanted it. So I was there waiting on the presentation of the seller so I could use my red pen. Yeah, I literally have a red pen that I do in these circumstances. And I'm sitting watching this show and it didn't go well. I'm sure the company was a good company. I'm sure of that. But the seller wasn't prepared to present. And thus, we provided a lowball offer. So how can you prevent this? How can you prevent getting a lower offer than expected during this phase? Well, number one is you have to have a really good or really well-spoken presenter. You need a presenter which is good on their toes, able to answer questions, even if they don't know the exact answers. And this presenter, if they're some sort of a sales savvy guy, they're going to realize that they can say, you know, I don't know the answer to that question. Let me get back with you. Many times in the process, we try to throw out questions to see if they can get the presenter. Many times it's the business owner. We try to get the presenter to make something up that we can hold them on so that we can come back later and offer a reduced price. That's if you're on the buyer side. So if you're on the seller side, you need a well-spoken presenter, someone who knows the company and who can work good on their toes, who can deal with somebody sitting across the table with them with a red pen, right? The second thing you can do is you can practice. Like you're going to the World Series. You're going to play many games ahead of time, but you can practice many times beforehand. You will likely get to present many times, and practice will make perfect. So oftentimes whenever we're dealing with this, we'll say, you know what? Let's bring in our experts, our transition team, and let's try to sell them. I know many times with a buyer's team, I'm working with the well-spoken presenter and we're listening and say, don't say that. You have to go this way. And we'll ask them many questions to try to prepare them. After all, this is the biggest deal of your life. You're the business owner's life. So you have to practice. Number 3 is just answer the questions. If you've ever dealt with attorneys at any length of time, they're going to ask lots of questions, and that's okay. Just answer the questions. If the buyer and the team ask a question you don't know the answer to, just say, look, I don't know the answer. That's a great question. And I'll have you an answer within 24 hours and deliver on that answer. Don't commit to something you can't do. But you don't have to go off on a tangent. I remember sitting in that room on that particular day. The seller was the proprietor. They were the person presenting, and we'd ask one question and they would go on for 10 minutes. And we got more out of that 10 minutes worth of conversation that was just fuel for the fire, if you will, fodder that we could use against them in our final price. You know, a fourth thing I'll tell you is you can pitch an unranked team. Now, what I mean by that is go back to my football analogy. It's not uncommon to see a top team play an unnamed team. And you'll want to do the same. Think about it. Many times you'll see these on homecomings. I know the University of Tennessee, University of Georgia, some of the Southeastern Conference, they'll play teams. I'm like, is that like a girls football team that they're coming? You just never heard of these places. And they will stomp them to death. Well, what they're doing is they're practicing. And you can go in and find a buyer who maybe potentially, that isn't my top choice of the person I would buy, and you can go in and pitch them. And after the fact, your transition team can talk to their transition team and see what their offer was, what they thought, etc. Number 5, the fifth thing you can do is bring your A game. The night before is not when you want to prepare. You should want to get to bed early the night before, get up in the morning, do you some exercise, drink you some cinnamon tea. I read something somewhere that cinnamon is supposed to help you with your memory. I've done that all my life. I don't know if it's true. I think there's some evidence which says that. I don't know. But you got to bring your A game. You're not going to get another shot. You got one shot at your top prospect. You have to make the presentation the best presentation that you can potentially provide. So those are 5 practical tips if you find yourself in the sales process that you can use to help you land that deal. So I always say, congratulations, you've reached the point where now you have to sell your company. I equate this particular motion as fishing. Here in Tennessee, we'll go out on the Tennessee River near my house, get the boat, go up against the banks, and we'll flip for big old lunker bass, smallmouth, largemouth bass. And what we'll do ultimately during the summer times is these bass will get right underneath the rocks, right underneath the rock edges. The river here in Tennessee, where I'm at near the east side of Tennessee, has some big rocks. And the bass will get right underneath the edge of the rock. And you can't let the lure get right down there to them. You got to get them to come away. So what we've done many times is we'll throw out let's say it's a worm, or let's say it's a jig or something. We'll throw it out, and then somebody will immediately follow just a hair behind them. So we'll land the first lure, let's say right about 4 or 5 inches in front of where that fish should be. And then the next lure will follow right behind where that fish is. And what works many times is that whenever we're pulling that first lure through the water, the fish, the bass in this case, will come out and chase it a little bit. And then ultimately that second lure ends up getting the catch. You have multiple different rigs that do that in fishing. That's what we're after here. We're after trying to prepare that bass as best we can, in this case the buyer, as best we can, to bite our bait. That's what we're after. The only difference is you don't have 2 lures. You have one shot at this. You have to prepare your team. And if you're at the point where you're now having to sell your company, you've done quite well for yourself. So guys, that's it for episode number 26, Financially Simple Podcast. Episode number 26 is in the books. Hey, I'm getting a lot of questions right now, and perhaps you have a question for me that you want me to answer in a future episode. We're going to start putting together a Q&A day. If you have a question, shoot me something through Twitter. Shoot me something on Facebook, LinkedIn, Spotify. No, not Spotify. I don't think you can ask questions through there. You may also reach out to me at justin@financiallysimple.com. That's a great way to get to me. You can go questions@financiallysimple.com. And we're making a list of questions right now that once we get done with this series, we're going to be able to answer those and come back and dive down the questions you may have. Hey, if you need some particular help in your business, reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to help you. Guys, like I always say every week, life is hard, life is complicated, money doesn't have to be. Let's continue to make our lives at least financially simple. Hey, y'all make it a great day.
You have been listening to the Financially Simple Podcast. The information in this show is for informational purposes only. This show is not investment advice. Instead, seek help from a competent financial advisor. Justin Goodbread, CFP, is an investment advisor representative of Heritage Investors, a registered investment advisor.